Hello everybody. So we just got episode 6, the finale of Loki season 1. So today we're going to talk about it. So the way I'm going to structure this video is I'm going to first give a non-spoiler general thoughts of the episode. Then I'm going to go into a bit of a walkthrough, spoiler review, going into specific things about the episode and giving my thoughts on them. And then I'm going to give a review of the season as a whole, and then I'll go into predictions for where I think things are going for the future of this show, as well as the future of the larger MCU. But first, let's get into my non-spoiler general thoughts on the episode, and I think that it wrapped up the season well. I think it gave a satisfying enough finale and satisfying enough reveals to things, while also setting up some interesting stuff for where it's going to go in season 2, and also interesting stuff for other Marvel projects to explore, like, Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. As I predicted, it sets that up a little bit. Like, you could see how the events of the finale will affect that. So it does a good job at balancing the two of wrapping up this season and setting up the next season and other MCU stuff. It leaves some plot lines dangling, like there's a few things throughout it that they have happened and don't go back to, which they're saving for season 2, I assume. And so, yeah, overall, I think this was a great finale. It did pretty much everything I wanted to do and more. So yeah, I thought it was great, and that kind of concludes my overall general thoughts on the episode. So now I'll go into my spoiler review, walking through the episode and giving my thoughts on the different things that happened throughout it. So we start out with our opening Marvel logo thing. Instead of hearing the famous, dun 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 dun, we instead hear different famous lines throughout the MCU, and then as the logo opening thing comes to an end, we start hearing more general stuff just throughout history, and that kind of sets up that, lets us know that we're seeing the timeline, and then we go and pan over to where our person running the TVA is hiding. Loki and Sylvie walk up to it. They go inside, and they're greeted by Miss Minutes, and she offers them the chance to walk away, to go back to the timeline, live their perfect lives. She's like, he who remains, the person who's running the TVA, that she calls him He Who Remains, and she's like, yeah, he's gonna, has it all figured out. I'll figure it all out for you. He can put you on the timeline, and I'll figure out a way for you to live your perfect life. Loki, you can rule Asgard, you could rule the world, the universe, you can do whatever you want, you can kill Thanos, take the Infinity Gauntlet, whatever you want, it's yours. Sylvie, you live your perfect life, you've been living on the run, you can just live the peaceful life you want to have. And they're like, yeah, no, I think we're gonna go and do what we were trying to do. We're gonna go kill He Who Remains and save everybody at the TVA, so yeah, let us through. So she's like, alright, lets them through. They go through this hallway, they get to this door, the door opens up, and it's just some guy. And, I could see some people feeling a bit Ralph Bonered by this. People thinking like, oh, it's gonna be another Loki variant, or it's gonna be Kang the Conqueror, or Mephisto, or some big crazy thing, and it's just kinda some random guy here. I haven't, seen other people's reviews of this, thoughts about it, but I could see people being a bit disappointed by this reveal. I don't have a problem with it personally. I think it worked out fine. Of course, later on, he does say that he's been called the Conqueror, so maybe he is still King of the Conqueror. I don't know. We'll see. But as of now, he just seems to be some guy. Although, saying that he is just some guy, that is a bit of an understatement because he does still have the ability to see the entire timeline, and he knows, we very quickly see that he knows exactly what's going to happen in this conversation with Loki and Sylvie. Sylvie tries to, kill him a few times, and he used his tempad to just jump out of the way. And, he reveals that he knows what's going to happen, later on in the conversation. And so, I'll admit, I don't really like when movies and shows do this with the villains, where they're like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. I've seen the future. I know exactly how this conversation is going to go. You can't trick me at all. And it's like, it just kind of annoys me because it's like, well, now you have to figure out a way for him to not know what's going to happen, which doesn't really make sense. It seems like when they do stuff like that, the villain has too much of a grip on the hero, and it's just like, well, how do we defeat him now? Like, you have to have some crazy thing happen for you to be able to defeat him, and it's just, I don't know. I don't like when movies and shows do this. I think it worked here because it makes sense with the story, and, we've set up this guy, he's leading the TVA, so obviously it makes sense he can see the timeline. It makes sense that he would know what happens here. And also they have this moment later on where there's the threshold where his knowledge of what's going to happen stops. So I think that was a good way of doing this. Doing this plotline that I don't, usually enjoy. I think they did it well here. And so, since he knows what's going to happen, he's able to use that time to give a bunch of exposition, but exposition that was much needed for, for us to understand, give us a better understanding of what his whole deal is, what the true origins of the TVA are, and we find out that it's not too far off from what we originally heard in the first episode. But basically what happened is this guy, there was a variant of him, and he originally lived in the 31st century, and he found out about the multiverse, and so did a bunch of the other variants of him. They all at the same time learned about the multiverse, and then they started, traveling between universes and helping each other. But then they started getting power hungry, and they started wanting to conquer other Earths, and there became, this big multiverse war that we heard about in the first episode. And it wasn't this, big giant multiverse war long ago. It was these guys all wanted to conquer Earth, so they were all being selfish, and they had this big war. And it wasn't the timekeepers that that came out of nowhere and combined the entire multiverse into one timeline and have been protecting it ever since. It was this guy who found Eliath and used Eliath to win the war, and he's just been protecting his own universe, his own timeline. It wasn't a sacred timeline, as we were told it was at first. It's just his timeline that, he destroyed all the other timelines. He created the TVA, so his would never branch, and there wouldn't be variants of him anymore, because if there's variants of him, they're all going to become power hungry and discover the multiverse and have the whole war again. And so that isn't that far off from what we originally learned, but it seems a lot less like, oh, the timekeepers are the protectors of the universe, and more like this guy defeated other versions of himself, and he's just kind of trying to pretty much, I guess, save the universe from himself. And he ends up giving Loki and Sylvie this choice to either kill him and let the timeline branch off and let there be a bunch of versions of him again, a bunch of variants of him again that will come and, try to conquer all the Earths, and there'll be this big war again. Or they can replace him, they can, kind of, I guess, let him retire, and they can run the TVA together. They can run it however they want. They can tell everybody that, everybody working for the TVA that they're variants. They can tell them why they're doing their job. They can, be truthful about it while still keeping the timeline intact. Then we jump back to the TVA. We see what's happening there. Mobius goes and confronts Leader Lady Renslayer and tells her that he told everybody at the TVA that they're variants. Then we see B-15, Hunter B-15, taking another person work for the TVA, another soldier, to see Renslayer as a principal at a school on the timeline. And so we see that they've told everybody there the truth, that they're all variants. Then Mobius tries to prune Renslayer, but she, takes the pruning stick and knocks him on the ground. And then she goes through this portal and says she's looking for free will. Goes through the portal, and we never see her again. I guess they're saving that for season 2. We'll see what exactly is happening with her. And in the conversation, prior to this between Mobius and her, she says that she believes that whoever created the TVA did it for a purpose, and she needs to find out what that is. And you kind of get a better idea of what her deal is, because you've kind of been confused this whole time of, like, what's her whole deal? Like, is she in on it? Is she not? Is she actually, what's her whole deal? And you kind of figure it out here, like, okay, she's, for basically everything that she's known, she's just been following the timekeepers. She's just been protecting the sacred timeline. That's all she knows. That's just what she's dedicated, or what she thinks she's dedicated her life to. And now she's finding out that all of that was a lie, but she doesn't want to believe that. She wants to believe that she was doing something good here. That even though the timekeepers weren't the ones who created the TVA, even though she was lied to about that, she believes that whoever actually did create the TVA must have done it for a reason, must have lied for a reason. And I think it's interesting seeing, finding out, like, her view of this versus Mobius's view of it. Mobius was like, oh, we were lied to, we're all variants, I need to tell everybody this, I need to save everybody, like, this was not what we thought it was, we need to take it down, we need to stop the whole thing. And Renslayer, on the other hand, is like, it's like, okay, we were lied to, but this is what we put our whole life into, like, this is what we put, like, thousands of years into. It can't possibly have been for nothing. Like, there must be a reason why we've been doing this. So, I find that interesting. I hope that they're able to develop that a little bit more next season, and, like, kind of show more of Renslayer's view of this. But anyway, she goes through the portal, and we don't see her again. Then we go back to Loki and Sylvie, and He Who Remains, and so we get to the point, we get to the threshold where his knowledge stops. He no longer knows what's going to happen, and so Sylvie goes to attack him, and Loki stops her. He's like, whoa, wait, we should think about this. If what he said was true, that means if we kill him, there's going to be all versions of him coming to attack, and I don't know that we're going to be able to, handle that. Like, that's going to be pretty big thing to have to deal with, so I think we should think about his offer of running the TVA. And Sylvie just thinks that he just wants the throne, that he just wants to rule the TVA, that he just wants power, he just wants a throne to sit on, and this leads to them having a battle. There's actually this line that I thought was really good, where Loki says to Sylvie, "You can't trust anybody, and I can't be trusted." And I think that was really good to show, like, his character arc of, like, he's learned to trust people, but because of his past, he can't be trusted by other people. And Sylvie, on the other hand, she's trustworthy, but can't trust others. And it's that kind of, I don't know, I thought that was, like, an interesting statement of, like, the parallel between them, or, like, the difference between them of, like, he's able to trust that he who remains is telling the truth, that if they kill him, it's going to be much worse than if they just take over. Whereas Sylvie cannot trust anybody, and that's why she believes that he's just trying to get in her head, and she just needs to finish her goal of killing the person who's running the TVA and destroying the TVA. So Loki and Sylvie, they end up having a battle. We get like a Loki versus Loki thing, which I thought was really cool. I think they used, the Loki powers in a cool way of having, like, each of them using Loki powers against each other, and the other using other Loki powers to counter that. I thought that was a cool fight scene there. But then we get to this point where Sylvie's about to kill he who remains again. Loki once again stops her, and he tells her that he doesn't want a throne. He doesn't really want to rule the TVA. He just wants her to be okay, and he tries to get her to not kill he who remains one more time. Tells her to think about it. They end up kissing. You're kind of like, should I cheer or should I be weirded out by this? Because you're like, they're two versions of the same people kissing. I don't, like, what is that exact? Is that fine? Like, I don't know how to feel about that, but they kiss, and Sylvie ends up putting Loki through this portal back to the TVA. She kills he who remains, and we see the timeline start branching all over the place. This is kind of where there's the setup for Multiverse of Madness. You're seeing the multiverse be created. Then we go back, we see Loki at the TVA. He runs around, finds Mobius and Hunter B-15, and tells them that he and Sylvie made a mistake, that they killed the person running the TVA, and that they need to prepare for, this multiverse war where there's a bunch of variants of he who remains coming to attack. They need to prepare, but Mobius and Hunter B-15 don't recognize him. They're like, who are you exactly? What? You're an analyst, right? Loki's very confused because obviously, these are two people that he's known, that he's gotten to know throughout the seasons of far, and so he's like, what? And then he goes, looks up, and he sees where the statues of the Timekeepers used to be. There's now one statue of he who remains, and the episode ends. There's a mid-credit scene, not really a mid-credit scene, more like a mid-credit announcement, where it basically just says Loki will return in Season 2. And so, I thought that was a really interesting way to end it. I like when, I like those, like when movies and TV shows end that way of like, of like having like a big change like that where the characters, don't know who another character is. That's a cool, like, twist that is interesting, and like, especially with like time travel stuff. So I thought that was a good way of ending it and setting up Season 2 Because I was wondering, because I knew they were gonna do a season 2, or at least I had heard that they were, and I was wondering like how that was exactly going to work, because it looked like they were building up to taking down the TVA. So I was like, how would a Loki season 2 work if there's no more TVA? And we find out here that I guess they did take down the TVA we saw, but there's a new TVA where another variant of this guy, He Who Remains, came, and he made a new TVA, I guess took new variants. That's what I'm assuming happened here, that he took new variants, or he erased the people, the workers there, he erased their minds. I don't know, but they set up season 2 well, where I was kind of like confused on how they were going to do it. They found a way to have a scenario where they can have a season 2 that's going to be interesting, that's going to be good. So, I'm excited for where things are going, what this means for the future of the MCU, what this means for Loki season 2, so I'm excited to see what happens next. But now I want to go and talk about the season as a whole, give my review of the entire season, and I think that this was the best out of all 3 Marvel Disney Plus shows we've gotten so far. I think this was the best one. I think it's structured much better than WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It draws you in right from the beginning, whereas, WandaVision, the first episode is just a sitcom, and so you're kind of like, this is new and different and weird, and it's intriguing, but it's also like, it's just a sitcom, like, what's happening here? And if you're not really like wanting this new, crazy, different thing, I could see how you're not going to enjoy the first few episodes of WandaVision. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think it just had a weird first episode where, as I said in my review of it, they don't have Sam and Bucky interact at all in the episode, which was a very weird choice for a show called Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where one of the main draws to the show is the interactions between Sam and Bucky. Like, that's one of the things that I really enjoyed from the trailers, was seeing, their banter and how they were gonna have that, just their interactions, because I mean, Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan are great together, so, I was very excited to see that, and in the first episode, they don't interact at all, and you're like, that was weird. But this season started off, first episode, you're into it, they draw you in quickly, show you the TVA, give you Mobius Loki banter that you wanted, set up where the season is going very well, and it just does such a good job at, again, drawing you in from the very beginning, and like setting up questions and mysteries and stuff that get paid off well later. Because one complaint that a lot of people have with WandaVision is that they set up so many cool things and cool concepts to explore, and all these like questions of what's going on, and the answers to them and the payoffs to them weren't as good as you wanted them to be, as you expected them to be. So I think this show did a good job at setting up things and paying them off well, and not leaving at one point in the show, not letting you know where it's going. Because you think at the beginning that's going to be about Loki and Mobius teaming up, trying to take down this variant of Loki, and then you think, oh, it's going to be about taking down the Timekeepers, and then they're revealed to be robots. Then you're like, oh, so it's going to be about taking down who's really running the TVA. And then you're like, oh, yeah, they did that, but now there's a new person running the TVA, and there's a new TVA, and you have to take that down. And so I think that it was just done much better than WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It was structured much better, and you could see exactly where this fits in the MCU. You could see exactly how the events of this season will affect future MCU projects. So, I think that this season was really great, and I think it was the best out of all 3 Marvel Disney Plus shows we've gotten so far. But now I want to go into predictions for where I think this show is going into season 2, and what I think it means for future MCU projects, especially Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. But I'll start out Loki season 2. I think we're gonna find out that this is a new TVA, that a new version of He Who Remains, another variant created, and they're gonna have to take him down. I think we're going to get maybe a situation where Loki and Sylvie are faced with the choice again, and this time they'll choose to run the TVA instead of killing He Who Remains. And I think that Loki is going to somehow give Mobius his memory back, or if this is like completely new Mobius, give him the memories, like make him that Mobius again. I think maybe like since Loki has learned to enchant, I think maybe that'll be how they'll do that, is Loki will use his enchanting powers to give Mobius his memory back, and they'll team up. I'm hoping we'll get some more stuff like episode 2, where you have Loki and Mobius teaming up, going to different points in time, investigating, what's happening, investigating different things, making new discoveries. I think that would be cool, because that's what I was expecting this show to be, and it was still very good the way it ended up, but I wish that, I think it would be cool to get a lot more of stuff like episode 2 in season 2, so, yeah, I hope they go that route. And also, of course, I hope that Mobius rides a jet ski. I think that has to happen next season. I mean, come on, how could you not have Mobius ride a jet ski at some point? Come on, next season, Mobius is definitely going to ride a jet ski. But that's all my predictions for Loki season 2. And for Multiverse of Madness, I think that this was definitely set up for that, in that it created the multiverse, the scenario where this film would happen, but I don't think there was going to be, direct ties to it where, you'll have characters from the show appear in the movie. I think that it's going to be very much just the multiverse is created, so now this movie is going to happen. Doctor Strange will be going through the multiverse. There's going to be some villain dealing with that, and it's going to be separate from Loki. The events of this, I don't think, will affect the Loki show, but it'll just be that the multiverse was created here, and so Doctor Strange is going to have to deal with that in Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness. So, yeah, so that's, I think, how that's going to tie in how this episode of Loki is going to affect Multiverse of Madness. It's just kind of setting up the multiverse for the movie to happen, but Multiverse of Madness isn't going to be like a direct continuation of Loki. It's just going to be a consequence of it. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the finale of Loki and the season as a whole. Please comment below your thoughts on the season and the finale and of the video. And remember to give this video a like, subscribing to the channel, and maybe check out some of my other videos. And with that said, that's a wrap.